Welcome back. Welcome back. We have another great speaker for you from our Faces of Women Speakers Bureau. Here we have Wendi Cooper, and she'll be talking about life post reentry or post life after reentry. Wendi is all yours. Guys, we hope that you enjoy and be encouraged by her stories. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you, Sally. Hey, everyone. My name is Wendi Cooper. I am a woman of trans experience from New Orleans, Louisiana. And just to give you a little history of my traumatic experience, in 1991 and 2001, I was convicted of 2 separate counts of crime against nature. Crime against nature is a law that is used to criminalize individuals for engaging in sexual activities that is non-procreative. So basically, like in 1806, Louisiana enacted a law that criminalized individuals for engaging in oral or anal sex in the state of Louisiana. If you are charged and convicted of crime against nature, then you're required to register as a sex offender for 10 years. And after the second conviction, you have to register for the duration of your life. I was affected by the crime against nature statute. And how I got that charge, I was on my way to go meet some friends at this club called Vibe in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I was stopped by an officer who I thought that appeared that he was attractive to me. And we began to engage in conversation. And so from that conversation, 10 minutes into the conversation, the officer had charged me with crime against nature. And so he took me to jail. When I went to jail, I didn't really knew what the law was because I didn't even think I did anything wrong because we just had a simple conversation. And so from there, I went through the court process. And so the court process was very, very disheartening for me because, going to court, I didn't have good representation, right? I didn't have good representation because in the state of Louisiana, individuals have the right to discriminate against individuals who are part of a community that is severely marginalized, which is the LGBTQ community. You had a prosecutor stating that, you need to plead 5 years. If you don't, you need to plead guilty. If you don't plead guilty, then you'll be doing 5 years in prison. Then you had a public defender, right, who's supposed to represent me and fight for me and advocate and make sure that, that I'm not been found guilty, from this injustice, right, that's been going around in the system for 206 years. She was telling me that, just plead guilty and I'll just help you get probation, and not knowing like the significance of, what this crime, carries. So after I pleaded guilty, I was forced to plead guilty, I had to register as a sex offender. And being a sex offender, it's a situation that is very humane to any human being. I remember going into different establishments, presenting my ID, and on my ID, I had, bold orange letters with the word sex offender on it. And so for me, it was very embarrassing, but also for me, I knew that I was not that person, right? And so for years, I had to find ways to try and help, remove that, that modern day scarlet letter, but I just didn't knew how to do it at the moment. Because of this charge, it caused a lot of bad experience, right? I was, stopped by an officer again, the officer, ran my name through. And because of me having this charge on my record, it caused the officer to misgender me, calling me he and him and boy, and you was born a man. But also too, that, being charged with this law, it caused like a lot of law enforcement to physically force themselves and do things that is abnormal, right? Forcing me to have oral oral sex with them in their police cars. You know, some officers forced me to have oral sex with them, you know, in public places, right? And because they knew that they was able to do these things, number one, you know, if I was to report or was to tell to report the officer, they had a right to, you know, fight and say, well, this person was charged with a law that discriminates against them, right? They had the right to say that I was charged with a crime against nature statute. And so for years, me being a part of this system that traditionally, right, disempowered me and also members in my community, is things that I had to do to try to get back on track, right? And so one of the things that I have done was trying to overcome this injustice. I had to go back to school, right? I started off as a nursing assistant. I did that for about 10 years. And in the process of me being a nursing assistant, I went back to school. I got my bachelor's in biology. And from there, I went back and got my master's in criminal justice in 2015. And so after 2015, I began to be a part of other organizations that began to see the wrongness of how a system that traditionally, right, disempower, you know, poor Black women and transgender women. I got involved with Women with a Vision, right? And so Women with a Vision was an organization. It's more like that mother organization for me, the first organization that I engaged with, who helped me remove the sex offender from over my head, right? And so by doing that, I was a plaintiff in the case. Me and eight other plaintiffs, and in this fight, I helped to remove over 800 people from off the sex offender registry, right? And so from there, years later, I began to be a part of Operation Restoration, who helped me with a campaign called The Cans Can't Stand. It's a campaign that brings awareness to a law in Louisiana that discriminates against the existence of the LGBTQ community and poor Black women, right? And so what I have done is to bring awareness, I had a symposium. The symposium was broken down into 3 sections. I had a professor from Loyola University showed people how the LGBTQ system is created, right? Also, I had people who advocated for the law. I had a judge, I had an activist, I had a person who's a human relations commission for the city of New Orleans. And also I had another part of the panel was more of like people who was affected by the crime against nature statute. And so what I'm doing now is I'm educating people and bringing awareness to this law. So hopefully in 2021, this law can be eradicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendi. You guys, it's not easy, telling your stories about, you're navigating through the justice system. Thank you, Wendi, for enlightening us on the system.